responsibilities of the licensee in charge. 4 times this week, we've had quite serious questions from people, whether they're wanting to become a licensee in charge, they're being asked to be the director and licensee in charge of another company, or just concerned about what are the actual responsibilities of a licensee in charge. Now, I've talked about this quite a few times, and some of you might probably be able to say exactly what I'm going to talk about, and that's Section 32 of the Property, Stock and Business Agents Act, which talks about the proper supervision. It is the licensee, amongst a whole range of other things that licensees in charge are responsible for. You are responsible for all the actions, activities and functions that occur within your agency. So whatever it is that you are doing, that your licensed agents, that your certificate of registration agents, that anyone's doing marketing or anything else, the licensee in charge is actually responsible for what is happening there in the real estate functions that are happening. So let's go back to Section 32, which talks about appropriate supervision. So you need to be watching what people are doing. You need to be making sure that they're following and adhering to policies and procedures. You need to make sure that you've got policies and procedures and that you're actually complying with those. Fair Trading have made it really easy. They've issued Commissioner's Guidelines on Supervision Guidelines. So exactly what you actually need to do as a licensee in charge. Now, a lot of people who work in agencies think, well, you know, I'm a certificate person or I'm a licensed agent, and if something goes wrong, well, it's only the licensee in charge that's going to get in trouble for this. Well, it's not true. Whilst the supervision guidelines are there for what the licensee in charge is responsible for, there is a dual responsibility here. Your own actions, you are responsible for what you do. So there will be, you know, when Fair Trading look at you, and if you're not adhering to the legislation in any way, it's not just the licensee in charge that gets in trouble. Yes, they do. They will get in trouble, and it's because they're possibly not supervising correctly, and that comes back to Section 32 of the Act. But if you're doing something wrong and you're not the licensee in charge, you're responsible as well. So guys, just because it's about appropriate supervision doesn't mean that you can't not participate in that. So it has to be a collaborative affair that's going on here. Let's have a quick look once again at the 6 requirements under the Supervision Guidelines. Now, be mindful, guys, when the property industry reforms or the amendment bill comes into play next March, yes, we have a date and we'll talk about that again later, but when that all comes into play next March, we are going to get some extended or new and revised supervision guidelines. So they will be extended, and there'll be more requirements and more direction and assistance provided to licensees in charge on how they need to supervise their agency. So we look forward to getting those. But in the meantime, and up until that comes into play, we've got 6 requirements. First 2 are about trust accounting. The first one's about daily banking procedures or next day banking procedures in terms of managing your trust monies. Second one's again about trust money. It's about month-end bank reconciliation. Many agents reconcile their trust account every day, particularly if they're running a property management rent roll, whether that's residential, commercial, or whatever they're doing. If it's a rent roll, then often they're reconciling every day. Good practice. But what's required under the supervision guidelines is every month, and that's the licensee in charge's responsibility to sign off on that. Again, that's going to change and become even more of a licensee in charge responsibility when the reforms come in. So that's the first 2 about trust accounting. The third one is about your substantiation of price. The fourth one, that's for residential sales. We all know about that. We've got the underquoting laws that run with that. The fourth one is about disclosures. The first one is that you have a checklist that your advertising has no misleading and deceptive information in it, and that you have a checklist that shows that. And the second 2 points of disclosure in there are about obtaining a beneficial interest or selling a property in which you have a beneficial interest. So there's guidelines around that. The fifth requirement is that you have a complaints handling procedure, and that's a complaints handling procedure for complaints of a financial nature and for a separate one for complaints of a general nature. The 6th requirement is actually the most important, because it actually says that you have to have evidence that you are actually implementing, not just word service and ideas and policies and procedures about all of these, but you actually have evidence that you're applying and doing the requirements 1 to 5. So easy one, number 6, just proof that you're actually doing the 5 requirements under the supervision guidelines. So guys, it is serious, it is important, it is part of the legislation, part that fair trading take very, very seriously. And so you need to ensure that as a licensee in charge, you are supervising closely everything that is going on within your office.